Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Public Sector I Heart You podcast. I'm Rebecca Davis, Chief Executive at West Midlands Employers, and joining me today is Paul Johnson, Chief Executive at Solihull, Metropolitan Borough Council. It's a pleasure to have you, Paul.
Good to be here, Rebecca.
It is, and we're going to have a conversation talking about a little bit about local government, a little bit about your career journey, and a little bit about your leadership in your current organisation. So thank you ever so much for joining us, and let's get started. Okay, so local government, it always gets a bit of negative press, I think, and all the great stuff that we do as a sector often isn't shouted out loudly enough. So just tell me a little bit about why you're proud to work for the local government sector.
Well, I mean, I've done it for 43 years, so that's the start, and I wouldn't have done it for so long if I didn't enjoy it. So 43 years of working in local government. I'm proud because we're constantly dealing with challenges in the community. We're constantly supporting people in the community, and we work with brilliant people both in our organisations and across the boroughs that we work for. So and we hopefully make a difference to people's lives and offer opportunities also for people to develop and learn and work.
Yeah, absolutely. And 43 years is an incredible achievement, really, to sort of demonstrate how much that sector has changed as well in that time, I'm sure. So for you, what would be your career highlight? What has been the sort of the standout moment for you where you just thought, you know, I've absolutely made a huge difference here?
So I'm not going to talk about the big stuff. I'm going to talk about a community project. So in my local authority area in Solihull, we had a situation where the Solihull Boxing Club, that supports a large number of young people, young boys and girls, and obviously young adults as well, they lost their premises. So what we did, we managed to find some alternative premises for them, but they couldn't afford to fit them out. So we brought in all of our local contractors who put them all to, who improved the premises and created a new facility for the boxing club, which meant that over 100 young people who thought they were losing something that they loved were able to carry on. It's the only time in my career that I've got a round of applause. Because when I went to the opening, I did get a round of applause as the person who helped to make that happen. It wasn't about me, it was about everybody who contributed to the project. So that is a particular career highlight. I mean, there is some big stuff. I was involved in the first devolution deal for the West Midlands, negotiating the business rates deal for the West Midlands. That was in 2017, and since then the region has received £250 million that it wouldn't have otherwise received. So that's one of the big career highlights that I think.
And it's true, isn't it? It's sometimes those things which actually you can see the whites of someone's eyes about the difference you've made is where we feel that connection more strongly. That example just demonstrates perfectly just how local government gets things done. It just makes things happen locally through all sorts of flexible powers it can draw upon, through the ability and will of our ability to bring partners together, draw funding in from central and local government. So tell me a little bit about how you sort of approach that, really, working in such a diverse arena with so many different stakeholders.
Well, obviously we can't do things on our own, and we work with a number of partners. Particularly, we work really closely with the police, really closely with health, in terms of our most vulnerable people, children and adults who we support with their particular challenges. We work very closely with the police and health to make sure that we've got a whole system response to providing that support. What we also do is involve, in my particular area, is involve the political and board leaders from those organisations to make sure that right from the senior leadership at an officer level to the political leadership, there is ownership and buy-in to unblock and tackle challenges.
Yeah, and it's a role which, you know, is challenging at times, isn't it, dealing with so many stakeholders. Talking a little bit about working with politicians, because again, that's something which people who don't work in local government perhaps don't understand how that works. Tell us about how the council works for someone who perhaps doesn't work in local government, and the role of councillors and what they do. Okay,
so in my area, there are 51 elected members all across the political parties. So so there are elections obviously that the local people will elect their elected members for. Then the leading party will choose a cabinet all have individual portfolios. So you'll have a cabinet member for education and for transport, etc. And they show they make the political decisions in respect of those portfolios, and we as officers advise them on that.
Yeah, and I think for anyone who's coming into the sector, particularly from a different part of the public sector, that interface with elected members can feel quite alien if they're not used to working in it, which we take for granted. Yeah. So what are some of the sort of the key things which you do as chief executive in that space? What's your sort of role to sort of make that happen?
As chief executive, you're politically neutral, of course. So although the local authority is controlled by one particular party, as chief executive, you have to give equal advice to all the political parties. So you have to provide sound advice to the members. Sometimes you have to tell them some things that they don't want to hear, but we need to make sure that we're making good decisions which are best value and in the interests of the local community. So we are there, and particularly chief executive, as lead advisor to the members.
Yeah, and it's a difficult role, isn't it? It's a challenging role. But if someone was out there thinking, I've been a director, been a head of service, what would you say to them if they're thinking about going for a chief exec role? Because I hear a lot from people say, it's a bit too daunting, the responsibility, the exposure. How would you sort of encourage someone to step forward?
I think it can be daunting, but it can also be incredibly rewarding. You need a good team around you, and you can't do it yourself. A very wise person once told me that a chief executive who thinks they knows everything is a very dangerous person. So you need a good team around you. But in terms of going for that level, if you feel that you have the ability, don't let the fact that it sounds daunting put you off. Because if you've got the ability, surround yourself with a good team, you should go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is one of the sort of the challenges, is encouraging that pipeline of talent to come through in the sector, to make sure people feel that they want to put themselves forward and take on those roles. I know some people say it can often feel like a giant leap, going from sort of either a head of service to director or director to chief executive role. Did you feel like it was that, or did you feel actually all your experiences have sort of prepared you well? And
So how I did it and how I would advise people to do it is, when you become established in a particular role, then search out those development opportunities while you're in that role, so you're ready for the next level, and then move up and do it again. And obviously there are lots of professional development opportunities that you could seek out yourself as well. You have to take your responsibility for your own development. Nobody's going to do it for you. But it is an incredibly rewarding job. And if you think you've got the ability, don't let concerns about how daunting it is put you off.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, it's getting that pipeline of talent out there, feeling confident that they can step up. I think there's a role we've got to support people as well as they move into roles, and sort of what is some of the best sort of advice you were given when you sort of took over as chief executive?
So I think seek out your own mentors, those people who do a job and you admire them. So chief executives or people in other organisations that you think, I like how they go about their business. I think they're a good leader. I want to learn from them. And it doesn't just have to be one person, it can be a number of people. So seek out those people. Don't let people tell you who you should have or what course you should go on. Seek out your mentors or those people who will give you sound advice.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched there about how you can build your own team. Building a team is really important. I've had the pleasure of coming over to your management team, and it has a great feel to it, a really warm feel. So tell me about how you approach that and what what do you do to create that team?
So we make decisions as a team. We respect each other's differences, because you don't get to be a director without having strong opinions and a strong view on how things should be done. But you will inevitably have a team of very different personalities. You will never have a team where all the personalities are the same. And when you lead that team, you need to respect each member of your team will respond to, in particular circumstances, and make allowances for that. But we make decisions as a team. We talk about very difficult issues, and we resolve difficult problems, and there may be differences of opinion as how we should get to the solutions. But when we reach a solution, we agree that when you go out of the room, you've agreed that as a consensus, and that is the solution that the council will then work on.
Yeah. And what would you say your biggest sort of lesson has been in sort of leadership, really, is sort of building that team? Are there any times where you've gone, gosh, okay, really learned something valuable there?
I think it is about respecting the differences within the team, and I think it is when you feel, but again, somebody who I respect advised me, when you feel particularly wound up about something, take time to think about it. Don't respond immediately. Just take time.
Yeah, and it's those learnings, isn't it? And as you said, you've got to keep learning. So what would you say to someone if they were at the very start of their career, year one of their career, and they were looking at local government? What would you say would be the draw? Why should they come and work in the sector?
I think there are no boundaries.
Yeah.
So I joined at 16 straight from school. I haven't got A-levels. I haven't got a degree. But I am the top of the organisation. Yeah. And that people may not think that you can get to that level with that background. So I don't think there are any limits to how far you can go. Yeah. I think the variety is incredible. I mean, what we do at my council is new starters will start and they'll move around departments every 6 months and to get very different experiences to decide what is the career path that they want to take. We've got 1,200 statutory responsibilities and loads more non-statutory responsibilities. Yeah. We provide so many different services. You will find something that suits you. Absolutely.
And I think that story there about, how you entered the sector is really important. And social mobility is what we do well as a sector, getting people in and supporting them in their development and not setting limits or boundaries. It's pretty unlike any other sector, I think, isn't it? Where, there's always entry barriers or blocks or funnels. So tell me a little bit more about how you started your career.
So I started my career, as I say, straight from school, Nottingham City Council. As a 16-year-old, I started in the rent office. And then after 6 months in being moved around, which is similar to what we do now, I was moved into finance and worked in finance at Nottingham City Council for about 6 years. And then I moved on to a district council in Nottinghamshire, and was advised by the then Assistant Director of Finance that I won't get where I need to be unless I do a professional qualification. Yeah. So I then did a professional council qualification, moved across 3 other local authorities, and then moved to Solihull quite a few years ago now. That was a significant achievement for me as well, because I moved from a district council to a Met, and the perception is you can't do that.
Yes.
The perception is the jump is too big. Yeah. A council with a budget of 10 million to a council with a budget of 200 million. And then was Section 151 officer, Deputy Chief Executive, and then Chief Executive.
Yeah, no, and that's true as well, that moving between different types of council, that is another misconception that people often have about the sector, that you make a choice and you are stuck in one particular part of the sector. And it's great that you're sort of able to share that isn't a barrier. Actually, there's a real benefit, I think, having worked in different types of councils. Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Paul, for joining us this afternoon. I've really appreciated sort of the way you've sort of shared so much really about your experiences and sort of your thoughts on the sector at the moment. So thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you. Thank you very much.